From the City of Angels near the Pacific Ocean, good morning, good evening, wherever you may be across the nation, around the world. I'm George Norrie. This is Coast to Coast AM. Later tonight, the spirit world. Here's what's happening. Well, the United States hit its debt limit on Thursday, prompting the Treasury Department to begin using a series of accounting maneuvers to ensure the federal government can keep paying its bills. In a letter to Congress, the Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen said the government would begin using what's known as extraordinary measures to prevent the nation from breaching its statutory debt limit and asked lawmakers to raise or suspend the cap so that the government can continue meeting its financial obligations. My gosh. Actor Alec Baldwin and armorer Hannah Gutierrez-Reed will face criminal charges for the October 2021 fatal shooting of Rust cinematographer Helena Hutchins on the film set. Close to 16 months after Baldwin accidentally shot Hutchins and wounded the movie director Joel Souza with a loaded gun during rehearsal on the set of the indie western New Mexico's first judicial district attorney Mary Charmack finally unveiled her decision as to who should be charged and not charged in that tragic incident. Why they had a loaded gun on that set is beyond me. David Crosby, a founding member of the Byrds and Crosby, Stills and Nash, has died. He was 81. He was a singer, songwriter, and guitarist. He may have had COVID. A group of researchers at Columbia University's Mailman School of Public Health evaluated the American Heart Association's recently expanded metric, which now includes sleep as it relates to cardiovascular disease risk. The study, published in the Journal of the American Heart Association, provided evidence that sleep plays an important role when it comes to heart health. Here's Christian Wild from myheartbook.com with his reaction. Interesting. We always knew this, though, didn't we, Christian?
Yes, we did, George, but the American Heart Association recently added sleep as the seventh scoring tool to assess an individual's cardiovascular health risk. Now, to make this distinguished list of all the possible contenders, this factor has to be important for all of us. Anything we can do ourselves to lessen any contributor to heart disease, which still remains the number one killer in the world, we should consider. And this Columbia University study focused on the great importance of getting enough nightly sleep. The report shared that while sleep seems to be the first thing busy people squeeze out of their schedule, making time for more sleep should be the actual objective. And according to lead PhD author Noor McCarram, our results, he said, show that sleep health is integral to heart health, and that an expanded definition of cardiovascular health that includes sleep is more predictive of future heart health risk. Now, the report also included some common complications that can repeatedly interrupt our normal sleep patterns, even something, as he mentioned, as annoying as having noisy or argumentative neighbors. And as the study pointed out, a stressful marriage over years may harm your heart health, particularly if the tension has been prolonged for years. Matter of fact, George, in regard to adequate sleep, because of the great amount of cognitive decline, memory loss, and Alzheimer's going on, other studies are finding that the importance of not getting too much sleep as contributing to dementia and Alzheimer's disease. So the indication is too much or not enough sleep can both be problematic.
Christian's website is myheartbook.com, and I understand you have a formula for the heart.
Yes, because everybody's on statin drugs, and no doubt there are benefits for cholesterol with statin drugs, but at a price. There are so many studies now that indicate if you're going to be taking a statin drug, you better be getting coenzyme Q10 and vitamin K2, which are being destroyed by the statin drugs.
Good point.
So I put out the formula, Christian Weil's Heart Health Formula, that provides not only those two factors, but counters all the others that are being destroyed by the statin drugs.
You help a lot of people, Christian. We'll talk to you next week. MyHeartBook.com. An ally of President Vladimir Putin has warned NATO that a defeat of Russia in Ukraine would trigger a nuke war, while the head of the Russian Orthodox Church said the world would end if the West tried to destroy Russia. Such an apocalyptic rhetoric is intended to deter the U.S.-led NATO military alliance from getting even more involved in the war. Ukrainian President Zelensky has cast doubt about whether dictator Vladimir Putin is alive or not. Amongst speculation about his health, the Ukrainian leader says that he could be dead. Who knows? Who knows? It's important that consumers be aware of recalls because recalled foods may cause injury or illness, especially for people who are pregnant or have weakened immune systems because of age, chronic illness, or medical treatment. Food safety coach Jeff Nelkin with us. Well, that's obviously good advice, Jeff, isn't it?
Absolutely, especially if you fall into the categories you described, and especially if people have allergies and they're concerned about, certain ingredients not being found on the label and mislabeled. So, there's a constant, observing of what's going on, and you'll see it by category. Baked goods seem to be on the high list of recall, just as a side point. But again, think about all these recalls, and if it applies to you, or you're not quite sure of the product, or you heard something about it, George, people can put down on their computer www.recalls.gov, and that will give you an instant list of items that have been recalled, so that you can be up to date and then make some, quick decisions if you are, confused about the recall or not clear about the specificity of the recall. And again, should you be returning the product? Should you be disposing of the product? These are all pieces of information that you will find, as well as I want to keep in mind that if you have any of these products or you have any concerns about your kitchen, very inexpensive, 1 tablespoon of unscented bleach to a gallon of water, and then you can wipe down your surfaces if you're concerned about any recalled ingredients having touched any of your food prep surfaces.
Thank you, Jeff. Jeff's website, foodsafetycoach.com. Up next, Sir Charles Shults III joins us as we talk about robotics and artificial intelligence. Just how far will it take us? He's next on Coast to Coast AM. And welcome back to Coast. George Norrie with you. Sir Charles Shults III back with us. Worked at Martin Marietta Aerospace for 10 years on weapon systems and computer-based automated test equipment. He wrote the Nuke EMP test software for the Pershing II missile system, worked on the Patriot and Copperhead tank killer and advanced attack helicopter systems. Charles has performed research under grant on nuclear fusion, was knighted, and received a long-term grant for his present research in robotics and artificial intelligence. He's got several books out, including A Fossil Hunter's Guide to Mars. Sir Charles, welcome back.
Hey, it's always a pleasure, George. Thank you for bringing me back to the show.
Boy, I was at a fast food restaurant a couple weeks ago, and I swore they had a robot working in there.
Well, that's not surprising. A lot of places are replacing human labor with robotic labor, and I've seen a number of those systems, so, expect a lot of that to come in the near future.
Lots of stuff going on. I mean, what do you see as the advanced breakthrough with artificial intelligence?
Well, the advanced breakthroughs are coming very shortly, and we spoke briefly about Neuralink and Synchron and similar systems that plug into the human brain and allow us to read information, predict how you're going to move or what you're doing, and eventually interface things such as artificial limbs or machine parts, or even the ability to send texts by thinking about it. All of those things have been done. But what I really see on the horizon is they're going to be trying to copy what's in the human brain, potentially to upload humans and to provide us with interfaces to real-world systems. I mean, imagine not just replacing a limb, but being able to modify, erase, or write memories on demand. And we're getting very, very close to this. And you could learn skills in, let's say, a matter of hours instead of studying for weeks or years.
They would just plant it right into your brain.
That's exactly right. And they've already done the work on how to erase and modify memories. And one of the things they stated is, suppose you have somebody who has had some really traumatic experience in their lives, a psychological issue, and it would be not so difficult in the near future to modify or soften or even erase a memory of that sort, and in the hopes of bringing somebody back to a little more normal state of being, make things a little easier in their life. But also imagine, you know, when you dream, for instance, people are aware that the rate of time flow in a dream can be like 20 to 1. It's been suggested that you could be put into a neural interface system and you could experience something 20 times faster than you would in reality. And I've even heard people hint that, you know, you could have somebody serve out a prison sentence in like 5% of the time by putting them into a neural setup like this. But that's an odd thing to do.
With brain implants, why would somebody want to do that?
Well, for one thing, we know that we're trying to figure out a lot of things to make people's lives better. Some people are locked in or paralyzed, and the drive to make better prosthetic limbs has led us to the point where we've looked at plugging directly into the signals of the brain, decoding them, and using them to move those limbs. And that's actually becoming a reality right now. A number of them have been built, and they work quite effectively. But the thing that comes next is you understand that you can interface to another piece of equipment, like a whole avatar body, a robot remote body. Imagine people who operate heavy equipment or dangerous equipment simply by thinking about it. They put on a suit of armor and become the machine. And that has a lot of possibilities as well. They could be gigantic machines such as for mining, or even tiny or microscopic machines where you could really experience the effect of going through somebody's bloodstream and performing surgery at the microscopic level.
Sir Charles, what would these implants look like?
Well, a lot of them look very much about the size of a postage stamp. Neuralink that Elon Musk developed looks very much about the size of a postage stamp and is covered with thousands of tiny microelectrodes that plug directly into the neurons. The Synchron device that they're using presently is a lot like a stent. They don't have to do brain surgery. They literally insert it through an artery, and then it expands through the wall of the blood vessel with the contacts and plugs into the brain there.
Amazing.
There are different types.
People with dementia, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, would this help?
Well, it's possible, but we still don't understand exactly what the causes of those things are. But consider that if we had the ability to get into the brain like that and read the lost memories, or at least reconnect with them, it could certainly have a lot of therapeutic benefits for people who have lost a lot of memory or memory function, either through Alzheimer's or age, or even through a tumor or an accident of some sort.
What is driving the speed of artificial intelligence?
Wow. Well, you know, we've been accumulating a lot of knowledge over the years, but because of our technology, we're accumulating it faster and faster. Many people refer to that as the singularity coming. And so we've gotten so much more information and so many more people interested in it. We need systems that are smarter, faster, and more refined than the human thought process. And that's been one of the driving forces to get us there. And not only that, a lot of people want tireless workers that will do exactly what you want. They understand what you're telling them. And to make things, you know, easier for human beings, if we can automate a lot of systems and have lower failure rates, then it's going to be a real boon to the industrial half of society.
Remember the Boston Red Sox great baseball player Ted Williams?
Yes, I do.
His head is quite cryogenically frozen. They have hopes one day to be able to clone his body and download his memory from his brain into this new young body, and hence you have Ted Williams again.
Well, true. And one of the things to consider is downloading a mind or a personality is going to be rather complex for the following reasons. You know, if you have an IBM PC and you want to run Apple software, you can run a program called an emulator. If you have different kinds of computers, you can actually make a copy of the computer and how it works, like a model, an emulator, that will run the same code, and it doesn't affect your computer. If you have a download of a human mind, you have to have an emulator for the human brain in order to run all the software and memories. And keep in mind, if you do download a mind, you're not just going to read your memories. You're going to read your methods. You learn a lot of skills. How you process is a big part of it, and that's got to be downloaded into this emulator of the brain to start with, so it has the proper methods of doing things the way you do. You've learned ways of processing numbers and handling mechanisms and the skills that you've learned. But then you add all of your other memories, the objects and procedures that you've learned throughout your life. So it's a complex process, but step by step, we're getting very close to it.
Sir Charles, how does the physical brain work? On the face of it, it looks like a bunch of mush.
Yeah, you know what? That's a common perception when you look at a brain. There's not much to it, but the human brain has about 86 billion neurons in it, digital processing devices. And there's about 85 billion non-neuron cells in the brain, and they provide things such as the insulation. Glial cells are like the works and city department that bring in the resources and clean up after your brain, and the Schwann cells make the insulation, the myelin sheath that wraps the insulated part of the cell so the signals don't leak. So the thing that makes the brain really complicated is the fact that it's broken up so that there are about 250 different processes running all at once. And out of those 86 billion thinking neuron cells, there are over 100 trillion connections between them so the data can move around and the right decisions can be made. It's an exceptionally complicated device.
That is amazing. It truly is. What do you think will be advanced quickly and first, artificial intelligence or brain implants?
Well, the brain implants are moving along, but one of the things that slows the development is the ability to get to the point where they allow clinical trials in humans. Some have been done, and some great things have been discovered.
Are these volunteers?
There are volunteers who have issues. Some people are locked in and can't perform. There was a fellow in Australia who actually got an implant a number of years ago and can send texts now simply by thinking about it.
Incredible.
But the other thing, the other flip side here, the artificial intelligence, it's examinations of how the brains work in humans and other animals have taught us a lot of things. And making artificial neurons in networks has advanced to the point where we can simulate networks of millions of neurons now, and they learn and organize on their own. What's really interesting, though, is that we can make a system that can figure out how to fold a protein or how to draw a picture. But the human brain, as I mentioned, has about 250 processes running simultaneously. So you would really need to divide your job up into specific types of processes. For instance, your balance system, the things that, autonomic system that run your body temperature and know when you're hungry and need to breathe. There are a lot of housekeeping functions that we have to have in place if you're going to have a body. And if you think about it, you can't just have a mind existing in a vacuum. You have to actually have a place for it to live. I mean, imagine if you did upload a mind, what would it experience? What would it do? Where would it go? And the answer comes from an unlikely place. You know about these huge online gaming forums where they have a server with hundreds of people playing the same game in a virtual world.
All against each other, yeah.
Exactly. So where do you put an uploaded mind and how does it function? Well, the obvious answer is, you could download it into a robot body or give it video cameras and arms and it can interface with the world. But the other answer is to create a machine that simulates a whole virtual world for these minds to exist in. And it gives them a place to be, a way to sense, and a way to act without interfering with the real world or without having to directly interact with robot hardware. I suspect that one of the earliest things they're going to be doing is creating virtual worlds for uploaded minds when they get to that technology, because we've already uploaded simple minds like nematodes, and they've even downloaded them into robots so that you've got a robot that thinks it is the nematode running around doing things.
Will these people with implants understand reality, or will they be in this other world?
This is an extremely interesting and perhaps hazardous factor. If you were to wake up in a virtual world, let's say you've gone and you've been scanned to have your mind uploaded, there's one of two things that's going to happen. You're either going to, okay, the procedure's done and you go home, or you're going to go, hey, where the heck am I?
Let's talk more about that, Sir Charles, when we come back in just a moment on Coast to Coast AM. And welcome back to Coast. George Norrie with you, along with Sir Charles Shults III. As I mentioned, we'll take calls with Sir Charles next hour here on Coast to Coast. Sir Charles, we were talking about the digital world, the real world. Will people get mixed up?
Well, it's quite possible. That's one of the hazards. One of the things that's happening now is we notice people tend to retreat into game worlds very easily. And if this becomes even more realistic and more compelling, it could be that some people may literally lose track of whether they're in the real world or the virtual world, and that's a real possibility.
It is.
One of the things you can do is put some sort of a watermark or hallmark in the experience so that you can always see that it is there. And that's probably not a catch-all, but it's a good starting point.
Who will do the uploading on the brain?
Now, that's an interesting thing. There probably will end up being clinics available for it, and I would imagine that it would be a similar experience to having an MRI, but more intense. You'd probably take some sort of a tracer medication, something to relax you, and they do like an electrical stimulation and an audio and video stimulation and record all the signals. I expect to see some clinics showing up for it. And the thing about it is, when people are in a situation where their bodies are damaged, where it takes a long time to repair it, or their minds are damaged, or they're near death, they're probably going to use this as therapeutic or as a means of saving that mind. You can imagine that particularly wealthy people with a lot of influence would go this way if they're nearing the end of their lives. And you can also imagine that people who have had, disabilities or severe trauma might find it a very attractive way to extend themselves or gain new abilities. And you can also bet, when this becomes common, that a lot of employers are going to want people who have a brain interface so they can operate certain devices very easily and flawlessly. Imagine, like, instead of coal miners who are going to the bottom of the ocean, you have a fellow that sits right there on the dock in an office and operates the machine like he's in a trance, but he's running it as if he is actually there.
Can this be abused, Sir Charles?
Well, everything can, and that's one of the things about it. I would imagine that, you imagine, the digital armies they were talking about, the Project Alpha available in 2025. Just imagine if they do this and the AI isn't available, they're going to use people to do it, and it can be used for terrible things. I mean, it's hard enough sometimes to track people who steal your credit card data. What happens if they can put a virtual body on and commit physical crimes and not be identified or traced?
That could be kind of dangerous.
Yeah, I can think of a lot of things people can do that I'm not going to talk about.
And what if some group, organization, government decides to tap into your brain somehow? Would that be able to be done?
Well, you'd have to voluntarily have the hardware in there until it's developed to the point where it's like an injectable device. And there are some groups who are creating a digital sovereignty act that would mean that nobody was allowed to modify or get into your brain, just kind of like the Bill of Rights. But, a lot of that's being violated these days. But you can bet that there's going to also be a move to tranquilize a lot of the population in action. We see a lot of that today. Entertainment systems, things that just keep people off the street and occupied. It's interesting because it inspired a scene in my book, Oneiros, a whole civilization basically locked up in the Internet and dying right there when the civilization fell, and millions of minds inside the virtual world. We can imagine such things, and we can see how that could affect our own society.
What if 20 million people got brain implants and somehow one government would be able to tap into it and control the thoughts of all those people?
Well, that's quite possible.
Oh, boy.
The issue here is your bandwidth. How much data can you upload and download? But the other thing is, we've learned an awful lot about the psychology of controlling populations and predicting what they're going to do. And I can assure you that if this technology does become available, it certainly will be a real threat to a lot of people's ability to act and think. I just don't know if I trust any organization to control us. We have the right to be autonomous, and we have the right to choose our own destinies. When we get hooked up to a bunch of machinery, we reach a point where we will lose our grasp on our autonomy.
Will it get to the point where you won't even need a computer? You would
absolutely. I mean, not a computer as you'd recognize it. I'll give you an example. You know, over the years, we saw them go from relays to transistors to microchips. Just a couple of days ago, I saw where somebody had found a way to make stable quantum states at room temperature, and that means that they could be bringing quantum computing, completely high-speed, fast, compact room temperature devices to do quantum computing, and it could become real very, very soon. And that would mean orders of magnitude of increase in the power and density of how we compute.
I had a meeting yesterday with a couple Hollywood producers, and one of them handed me a DVD of a movie he had done. And the other producer said, "What is that?" And he said, "What is what?" He said, "What did you just give him?" And he said, "I gave him a DVD." He says, "Do they still make those?"
Yeah.
How quickly will technology change where it makes even this and renders this outdated?
Well, yes. I mean, remember when laser discs were first predicted years ago and how they were going to be the big thing, and then we got down to CDs and DVDs, and now we're down to flash media, and, you know, they're going up to multiple terabyte flash drives now, and with the proper compression interface, you can store movies and all sorts of stuff on a little chip small as your fingernail. You can bet that as the density gets higher and it gets more subtle and less power-consuming, it's going to be something that everybody's going to end up with implanted in the body somewhere. It's just the sort of progress we've been seeing for the last 30 years.
We're with Sir Charles Shults III. His website is linked up at coasttocoastam.com. Two-part question. Question one, what excites you the most about this technology?
Wow. The ability to create worlds and examples for learning and for entertainment that bring people real understanding and enjoyment, something that allows them to become effective in new ways, teaching people more than anything.
What scares you the most?
The fact that we can lose our autonomy and individuality. There will be people, well, you look at the people around you, many of them are almost like sheep in a lot of ways, and a handful are the ones that glow, they're really alive with ideas and life. And it doesn't take a lot to make people just kind of settle back and be entertained by simple things. I don't want to see people fall into a trance, fall into the dream state permanently. It's bad enough the way population growth is falling and health is decreasing and things are looking so terrible in the world. I mean, what happens when they have a new sort of a drug that they can't escape from and don't want to?
Could you make an unhackable chip for a brain?
That's an interesting question. I remember cryptography was supposed to be uncrackable, and now we have computers that can knock out, instead of millions of years, a couple of days what's been encrypted. If you can crack any code, you can hack just about anything. People don't even have to connect directly to the computer to hack it sometimes. They do something where they dither the power on and off and make it get into an illegal state, and then they can get into it. People are very clever, and they find ways to break things that you would never think of. I don't think you'll ever get an unhackable chip. I think you'll just get one that has a lot of security and safety features.
Microsoft just announced yesterday they're going to lay off 10,000 people. Where does this take the high-tech positions and jobs? Does it increase it or what?
Wow. Well, the thing about this is if you're laying off skilled workers and they don't have anywhere to go, you have to recognize that this was thought about a long time ago. I mean, everything's getting so automated that it's just impossible to have to be able to support 10,000 workers when 100 workers and some computers can do the job.
That's why I'm opposed to driverless trucks, for example, Sir Charles. I don't want to see our truck drivers lose their jobs.
Well, absolutely. But the fact about it is there's no guarantee that things will remain stable. We know that manufacturing is going to change greatly just because of laser cutters and 3D printers, and it's happening right under our noses. We don't see as many machine shops. Pretty soon, even heavy industry parts will be made with metal printers. And what happens to all the machine tool guys?
That's a good point. I mean, COVID itself has been devastating. Look what it's done for offices all around the country, where half the people are now working out of their homes.
Well, some people would say that's a positive thing, but I'm not really sure. I think that one of the things we're losing, and it's happened slowly over the last 50, 60 years, is the camaraderie. You knew your neighbors, you connected with them, you did things together, and then it isolated a little as people got suspicious and times got hard. And then you knew the people you worked with, and you had that social interaction with them that's extremely important to humans. What happens when they don't go anywhere and they just do everything by a Zoom meeting?
Well, absolutely. What will we start seeing publicly to know this is happening?
Well, we are already seeing signs of some of the... Did you see the newest Boston Dynamics robot that pushes a crate, jumps on top of it, does like a flip and a spin, lands on its feet? We're seeing changes in growth and technology that is going to replace a lot of labor. As you mentioned, you're seeing automated systems, robots serving in restaurants. In a funny sort of way, the old Showbiz Pizza and Chuck E. Cheese pizza places had robots entertaining people back then, 30, 40 years ago, but we're seeing huge changes in how everything is done, not just entertainment now. I'm not really sure if we're going to recognize this world in 10 to 15 years, because the rate is accelerating, and it's getting to the point where it's impossible to predict what's going to happen next.
Is it going faster than it did 15, 20 years ago?
Oh, without a question. It's been estimated that we double the amount of human knowledge every 6 months or less right now.
Wow.
And, we're running out of shorter and shorter intervals. I mean, it's going to get to the point soon where it's going to be 30 days, a week, 5 minutes, then what?
Will it get to the point, Sir Charles, where people literally are living in a digital world and they don't even want to come out of it?
I do suspect that this is going to be the next big thing. I mean, if you can create any sort of a world you can imagine with any characteristics you want, and you can go anywhere in it and do anything you want, the illusion becomes so overpowering that it outruns your ability to compensate for issues in reality. We're losing a lot of our social interaction skills because of the separation that's growing between people these days.
How expensive would a brain implant be?
It's going to get down to the point where they're not going to be $10. I mean, everything's going to be done smaller, finer, faster, cheaper, and more reliably. That's the way it always goes.
My gosh.
I mean, think about it. You can buy microprocessors these days with whole systems for like 30 cents.
How do they know how to attach to the neurons in your brain?
Well, that's the thing. The systems use AI to learn what the signals are. One of the things that's so amazing about brain circuitry itself is it's self-organizing. And it works because the feedback mechanisms are built into the neurons themselves. We're getting to microchips now that have the ability to start studying the signals moving through the neurons and then building up patterns and predictable natures show up. And before you know it, it can predict what it is you're thinking about doing. Those systems are already in existence, and it's a matter of combining clever hardware and advanced AI software.
Do you like all this?
I'm fascinated by it. All my life I've been fascinated by technology, but I must admit the things that I imagined coming didn't come. We've taken a sharp left turn into a weird zone where the things that you would think would make life better and expand the capabilities of humans have shifted into something dark and a little menacing, and I'm not sure if I could have ever predicted a world like this. I mean, nobody would have suspected we wouldn't be living on the moon and traveling in space and living under the sea, and instead we got tiny computing devices in our pockets that are, cell phones that are connected to the entire database of human knowledge, we're still not we're not reaching for the stars. We're not improving our planet. We're not helping each other.
You sound a bit hesitant about this stuff.
Well, that's because there's so much. Here's the issue. The people who seem to be running things in this world don't seem to be so concerned with the ethics. They're looking for results regardless of cost. And the most important thing for us to know is that we are free to make choices, even though those choices have consequences. We are free to do as we wish, but then we have to deal with the fallout. It's all being taken from us in one way or another. And technology is not meant to be a control for humans. It's supposed to be something that frees us and expands us.
Well, is there a way out?
Everybody needs to have ethics and morals. I mean, evil is.
But they won't, Sir Charles.
In a word, well, that's the thing. I think that as people live with more technology and their lifespans, if they improve and increase, eventually they're going to get to the point where they sit back and they go, I'm tired of this. Look at how older people have reacted to the world that they're in today. And younger people often feel they have answers and solutions to problems. And why don't those old people do it? They wreck the world. And the fact is, all of us who've been around a while have understood it's a lot more complex and not as simple as you thought.
That is absolutely true. And I'd rather still be with somebody who's had some experience than somebody who has not. Up next, we're going to take your phone calls with Sir Charles Shults III. Our special guest this hour, Sir Charles Shults III. We're talking about robotics and artificial intelligence, brain implants, and we're going to take your calls with him this hour on Coast to Coast. And welcome back, Sir Charles Shults III with us. Sir Charles, would you get a brain implant?
I would not, because I can't think of any real need for it. And I want to retain the natural state of my mind. I like the way it works right now.
I agree. Now, what if there was something wrong with you, some brain damage that a chip could fix?
Well, it's a possibility under those circumstances, but I'd have to feel very certain that it wasn't something that could be communicated with externally in any way.
Exactly.
I mean, if you think about it, if you have the ability to build something that can repair damage to your brain, you have a lot of other abilities under your belt right there. But, unless it was something really crucial, I think that I would avoid any sort of implant in my brain.
I know a guy in St. Louis who needed a stent put in one of his heart arteries when I was back in St. Louis. And rather than cut him open and put it in, they sent it up there through his wrist.
Sure.
It's amazing technology. So you were saying that they don't even have to operate on your brain. They just put it through a vein?
That's exactly right. They generally can slide the thing, and it's like a stent, and it has all the electrodes in it. Slide it up into an artery to a nice location in the part of the brain you want to interface with, and when you release it, it expands and locks into place and makes the connections through the blood vessel walls. It's an amazing process.
What if they put it in the wrong spot?
Well, you would get the wrong signals. For instance, imagine a map of your body laid out on the top of your brain, and then there is one. It's called the homunculus. It means the little man. And if you want to read the signals from the arm or the neck or from the leg, you have to connect to that region to get the most effective signals. I mean, you can probably get it from another region, but it's not as effective as if you go to the right area.
That's just incredible technology. It really is. What companies other than Neuralink are fueling this?
Synchron was the other big company in it, and it turns out that one of the key players who worked with Neuralink and Elon Musk quit a few years ago, and went over to Synchron and is working with them. So there is a bit of a competition there. The thing about it is, as the electrode patterns get finer, you get more resolution of information. There's a competition right now to get interfaces that don't damage the cell in any way. Consider that the electrodes literally have to pierce the neuron in order to interface to it, but a better method might be to have something similar to the synapse, the connection that neurons mostly make for communication. So we're going to see a lot of improvements, and the stent method or the implanted chip method, I think something that goes into the bloodstream is going to be a much more viable option for the very simple reason you can get up and leave in a few hours without any real issues.
That's tremendous. You ready for some calls?
Absolutely.
Let's go to Supa in Los Angeles, California. Hi, Sup. Welcome.
Hey, George. Hi, Sir Charles.
Hi.
I have a couple of questions because, we're worried about the cancel culture now.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
I can't imagine an electronic or technological warfare where one group is just determined to have their way and just going to cancel everybody out. That's going to be really bad.
We do see a lot of that in social media right now. I mean, that's literally what you've just described. It's an electronic war between different cultures trying to wipe each other out, in a sense.
Go ahead with your second question, Sue.
Yes.
I was just curious. I was thinking I had a little frou-frou with one of my friends the other day, and I thought, I just want to kill her. She makes me so mad. And, your thoughts change all the time. Like, I'm going to wear a red dress today or a blue blouse. And what if you're just kind of mulling over what to do, and then that thought is in the computer, and all of a sudden you killed your friend because you're like, I said I wanted my friend to, I want to kill my friend. But, of course, you didn't mean it. So, but since you hadn't changed your thought in a couple of days, you accidentally killed somebody, electronic manslaughter.
Be careful what you wish for.
That sort of a thing has been discussed in science fiction, and I would imagine that to some degree it could be very possible in the near future when this stuff becomes very prevalent, when it becomes very common. But as it stands right now, there have been people who, for instance, who had pacemakers or cardiac implants, and people have attacked them using methods such as microwaves or specific devices that would interfere with the electronics. So it's not an unknown thing. It's not discussed a lot, but it has been done. You can see the same sort of thing with the college students who were able to hack one of the Toyotas a few years back, drive-by wire systems, and they found codes they could send that make like just the front left brake lock and the steering swing to the right, and they could do all sorts of things with the vehicle that were never intended. So you can bet somebody's going to figure out how to do the same thing with these devices.
And they thought it was funny, Sir Charles.
What's that?
They thought it was funny when they did that.
Well, yeah, I mean, they thought it was amazing, that they could even do it at all, and they'd actually turned into a research project, and it showed the sorts of hazards that can exist in truly complicated systems. So there we stand.
Next up, let's go to John in Wisconsin. Welcome to the show. Hey, John.
Hello, George. Hello, Sir Charles.
Hi.
Foremost, Sir Charles, you have a fabulous voice tone. George
thank you.
Also has a fabulous voice tone. When I hear you two gentlemen converse, it brings me peace and harmony, so thank you.
Well, you're welcome.
Sir Charles, here's my question. 3 years ago, I mysteriously lost 99% of my eyesight. The 1% I have left just allows me to see if the light flickers on and off. I can't see anything clear, but that gives me hope, Sir Charles. I have met with many doctors. Just prior to Christmas, I met with one of the top neuro-ophthalmologists in the country, and she came to the conclusion everybody else did, and which was, John, you're in excellent health for 65 years old. We don't know why you're blind. So when I heard you earlier tonight, Sir Charles, I gained more hope. And I'm just wondering if you felt there was a remote possibility that someday a brain implant in me may enable the optical nerve, which runs from my brain to my eyesight, to wake that up a little bit so I could go from a 1% to a little bit more. And again, I have hope. And Sir Charles, thank you for all you do.
Well, thank you so much, and I'll give you a little information on that. One of the things that a lot of people aren't aware of is the eye is not so much a separate organ as it is an extension of the brain. And so the optical nerve, which they think of as just a communications path, there's a lot more going on there than that. They thought that they could simply stimulate dots on the optic nerve and draw an image for you. And it doesn't work that way. They only get dots called phosphines when they do that. The eye's retina literally contains numerous layers of neural tissue, and it is its own processor, and it sends all that condensed communication, the translated stuff, back along the optic nerve. Now, recent work has showed that they could make a retina that uses electrochemical methods to talk to the optic nerve and could have layers that process in a similar manner to the retina itself. So we're getting close to the point where we think it should be possible to create a new retina and a new optical nerve connection. We'll see what happens, but a lot of things are changing these days, and I do expect to see some new information on that very soon.
And haven't they done some implants on people who have been somewhat blind?
They have. What they do is they use something. It's kind of like a charge coupling effect in the ones they've put together, and it's a type of bioceramic. My understanding is they've come up with a material that the body does not reject and they can fuse to very easily, sort of like the bioglass in the bone years ago. And I do, I have a lot of hope for this. The other thing to look at is this. With the 3D printing and cloning technology we're developing, it should also be possible to 3D print or grow an eye that's your exact tissue and won't be rejected, and to get the tissue to, fuse together properly. So we have two avenues right away that we can pursue. One is an actual replacement eye, and the other is, a technically enhanced replacement.
Talking about technology, we take text and tweets. Tom, what do you have for Sir Charles?
This one from Corrine in West Palm Beach. Please ask Sir Charles to discuss robots getting personalities, such as in the movie Chappie.
Now, this actually is not so unusual. Think about the fact that our personality is controlled by small clusters of cells in our forebrain. Small groups of cells organize, and they connect into your memories and everything, and they call the shots. But you've got numerous other clusters that act in different ways, and sometimes they act like subservients or, sub-personalities. When a machine starts learning what works for it, when it uses neural networks to learn how to get the best yield, it often develops what looks like personality quirks or traits. And when a person gets physically hit and gets amnesia, what it means is the cluster of cells that normally runs their personality is out of commission for some reason or another, and another cluster steps in and takes over. But it doesn't have the same access and the same programming, and that's why its personality and its memories are different. It's not unusual, though. Complex robots will show what look like personality quirks if they have the ability to make their own decisions and have some free will. I mean, that's neural networks never develop exactly the same way.
61 years ago, the late Ray Bradbury wrote a script for Rod Serling from the Walt Whitman poem, I Sing the Body Electric. Do you remember that Twilight Zone episode?
I do remember a little bit of it.
It was about a family who lost their mother. She died. Yes. And the father, who was so distraught, went to the robot store and bought a nanny for his two kids. And she raised the kids. And the whole premise was watching the kids grow up and everything else, and the nanny stayed the same. Well, when the kids became adults, the nanny moved off to another family.
Right.
And that was the premise of the whole thing. That's conceivable.
Well, it certainly is, but understand that the resolution and advancement of the technology will change. A lot of the things that we saw in the past in science fiction assumed that the change would be like a linear thing. What we're seeing actually is that it isn't. It's geometric. So, that's a charming story and very interesting, and it's possible, but that would only work in a world where the rate of technical change was slow and cumulative like we've known in the past.
Let's go out to Toronto. Paul's with us. Welcome to the program. Hi, Paul. Go ahead.
Hey, George. How are you?
Okay, Paulie. Thank you.
I miss you, buddy. I haven't spoken to you in quite a while.
Everything good?
Yeah, everything's good. Just doing Uber. My question is, we have one of the biggest research hospitals for cancer in the world, and they have a lottery every year, millions of dollars, but you never see, the results. I honestly believe I honestly believe there's a cure for cancer and for diabetes, and they're not putting it out. But, you know, they're focusing on AI, you know, with all these advancements, but still they're using archaic technology for cancer.
Well, that's an argument that is well taken, is it not, Sir Charles?
Well, we actually, first of all, the first thing I have to say is that cancer is really like about 200 different illnesses, and some are caused by genetic propensities, and some are caused by materials you're exposed to, some are caused by viral agents. There are many things that can cause cancer. And basically your body recognizes and tries to fight off cancer with a number of strategies, and it usually works. I mean, most people may have cancer 6 to 12 times in their lifespan, but it remits and they never know they have it. It's only the cases that are persistent and you don't get over that are recognized and treated. And so that being said, we have made a lot of advancements in cancer treatment, and yes, it does seem slow, but here's one of the big issues. As the treatments become more obtuse and complex, they're less and less understandable to the man in the street. And so it's harder for doctors to share that sort of information with you, and you understand it. That's one of the barriers between it. You know, most people are not people who would understand medical technologies as advanced as we have today. But the other thing is, yes, it seems awfully odd that with all the advancements we've made that we haven't made more progress in eliminating a lot of it. Some cancers are curable quite easily these days, but it just seems like it's not getting there, and it's disheartening to a lot of people.
Wildcard line, Jeff from Ferguson, Missouri. Hey, Jeffrey, go ahead.
Thanks, George, and hello, Sir Charles. One quick thing before my main comment.
Yeah.
There was a TV movie of Knight Rider that was meant to be a new series. The character was a policewoman who was shot in the head and was fixed with a chip.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. And that was years ago, right?
Yeah. The series was the movie was like 1990.
30 years ago. Wow.
But anyway, my main question to Sir Charles is, what technology does he see that's being developed that could be interpreted to be used as the mark from Revelations? And I'll take the answer off the air. Thank you.
Now, that's actually a very interesting question. And I would say that the mark they talk about could be as simple as a chip that we have today. We have a number of microchips capable of storing any amount of information.
We sure do.
And of being read and written remotely through an RFID device or a similar type of system. We literally have that sort of technology right now. It just isn't in wide use. I've noticed in many countries they tout the advantages of having a microchip in your hand. You can run it over a reader and you get into a room you're supposed to be in. It controls access. Many companies really encourage their employees to use these systems for security reasons. It's a slippery slope, and the problem is as financial institutions become more and more difficult to deal with as they become more controlling over the money and the form it's in, we're to the point now where they literally can turn your money off, and that's the real danger. And I know that a lot of people, well-intentioned, say, well, we ought to have, the things you own listed as being yours in some big database. But, boy, that's the worst thing in the world you can do, because now it gets a third party involved in the simple act of ownership. This is where it's headed, and you're right, it is a biblical thing. What amazes me, if you read Revelations, is almost everything you see happening around us today seems to be spelled out quite clearly right there. If that doesn't terrify you, I don't know what will.
Well, basically in Revelation, they said you would not be able to buy or sell without the mark of the beast.
Exactly. And, it's interesting because in a lot of languages, a computer is considered a beast. A machine is considered a beast. It's a primitive way of expressing something that handles the burdens and the work for you.
We're going to come back in a moment and take final calls with Sir Charles Shults III. Sir Charles, your books are still available?
Absolutely, and Oneiros, the science fiction novel, has gone into paperback and Kindle just recently, and I encourage you to read it. It's a lot of fun, very interesting.
That book came out last year, didn't it?
It just came out this last year. I had it published on CD version previously. It's had some minor updates and stuff, so I think people will really enjoy it. It had real good reviews.
And who knighted you?
I was knighted by a fellow who bought a Scottish barony, Dr. Nelson Ying. He's a philanthropist, and he became a landed baron from Aberdeenshire, Scotland.
Did he put a sword on your shoulders?
Absolutely. There was a whole ceremony. It was pretty amazing, and I received a grant that paid for my research. And, it was an amazing thing, and I took it quite seriously. It seemed to rile a lot of people up for some reason, but you know what? You can't worry about things like that.
Exactly.
You do what you know is right.
We're coming back with final calls with Sir Charles Shults III in a moment on Coast to Coast AM. Next hour, Susan Slaughter joins us as we talk about hauntings and the spirit realm on Coast to Coast. Make sure you stick around and you're part of the program. And welcome back to Coast. George Norrie back with Sir Charles Shults III. Sir Charles, what was it that caught your attention, got your eye interested in AI?
Well, the fact that you could learn something about the functioning of the brain, and then you could actually build systems that would do something for you. I think the thing that a lot of people don't understand is a program isn't just a bunch of instructions. When you're working with AI, it becomes a force of its own. It makes decisions. It does things.
Let's go to the phones. West of the Rockies, Jason in Los Angeles is with us. Hey, Jason, welcome.
Hi, thanks, George. How you guys doing tonight?
Everybody's good.
Fantastic topic.
It sure is.
I love. Yeah, this is great. I was just talking to one of my friends about this, and I turned the show on after work, and I heard you guys were talking about it. And one of my questions, amongst the many concerns like security concerns and such, and definitely the mark of the beast thing, that definitely plays in. But one of my questions is, isn't this sort of a modern version of eugenics as well? It seems like we just can't get away. Humanity just finds a way to keep coming back to some version of eugenics. And this seems to me like a way to create a ruling class, for the haves and the have-nots.
What do you think, Charles?
Yeah, that's, I think we're seeing a lot of that already. Look at the social system that they have, for instance, in China, where they grade you on how fit you are as a member of society in so many ways, and they can deny you use of, like, the bus services or financial services based on your social credit score. And we're seeing exactly the same thing being implemented here. I don't understand. I've often felt that the desire to control the decisions and lives of others is a mental illness, and we're surrounded by people who have their profession as controlling how you live. It doesn't make any sense. Why don't they just leave people alone and make their own decisions, and that's the way it should be?
What about the caste system in India? Same thing, isn't it?
And it is. A feeling that you have to be a certain segment of society or stratification of society to have access to certain things and be treated a certain way. The caste system is a perfect example of that, rating people and, deciding, I guess, how valuable they are as a person in a sense.
Let's go to Cheryl, Washburn, Missouri. Hello, Cheryl. Go ahead.
Hey, George, and hi, Sir Charles. The third. That's pretty cool. I'm wondering about this virtual reality in regards to, like, manufacturing, maybe fast food too, or a lot of jobs. So we put on a virtual headset and we're sitting at home and doing work, and the robots are doing the work through the virtual reality that we're, doing. Do you think it's possible they can absorb or learn our emotions and personality and is in the process? Would that be a threat, and can we be an individual anymore post all this technology?
Well,
that's a great question. And the issue is simple. If the machine doesn't have the capacity to learn those tasks, then obviously it cannot. If the machine is built to perform specific functions, there's a certain level of generalization that you make in machines so it's flexible enough to do a lot of things. AI systems now bring a new sort of a hazard, and it's that you cannot predict what the systems learn and how they implement it. You just go through training cycles until it performs the way you want. Could it learn things about your personality? Maybe. Many years ago, they wrote a program for keys, on being pressed on computers that would analyze your keystrokes and figure out who you were. So if you sat down and started typing on the keyboard and your keystroke patterns didn't match that of the owner of the machine, it would refuse to work. Similar things to that can be done with machinery, and whether we intend it or not, it may emerge.
Let's go to Harry, Port Huron, Michigan. Hello, Harry. Welcome.
Hey, George. I just wanted to, before I make my thing with you guys, I sent you an email. If you can get Jim Rickards back, it'd be great.
I saw that.
You had him on,
I saw that, yeah.
but it's not good. He just did a video, and it's something's very important coming to this country. And have him talk about Biden bucks, and he'll know what it is. As far as your guest, I have a question about what about people with Alzheimer's? I would love to see if we can help them. You talk about a brain implant or a chip or something like that. They need something, and no drug has worked yet. It slows it down, but it doesn't stop the disease and restore memory yet.
We talked a little bit about that earlier, but go ahead again, Sir Charles.
We did, and so the thing about it is they found methods of treating Alzheimer's that seem to reverse a lot of the effects to a degree, but the problem is there's a great disagreement about whether the amyloid plaques, the protein structures they find, are the cause of it or a result of some other process. And many people, of course, have related the thought that aluminum compounds in the brain are causing things to happen, and that's also possible. At this point, there was a research program where they used fisetin, a compound that was found in fruit, and a derivative of it, and also used that with omega oils, and it seemed to have a very positive effect. But the caveat is this: the people had to have good blood oxygen flow. They had to exercise regularly, and they had to get out and have mental stimulation as well. There are some things that help some people and slow it or help a little bit, but nothing that I've seen released is guaranteed to do it, and it's still because we don't know exactly what's causing it. It is something that seems much more prevalent in today's societies than it used to be in the far past. But then again, we don't know, if people lived long enough for the symptoms to show up back then as well. There's, it looks both ways depending on whose data you look at. But I do expect that using technical means such as chips and implants and so forth, we may be able to get around a lot of it. But I also feel at the same time that it might just be a stalling action, not a cure.
Let's go to Joe, Long Island, New York. Welcome, Joseph. Go ahead.
Yeah, hi, Sir Charles. Two related questions. One would be, say, I'm a beginning skier or, maybe skiing well, but, I want to leapfrog to the advanced ski slope. There's a lot of ambiguity in that. So even if you had AI-enhanced skis or AI aids on the slope, there's still ambiguity there in that decision, and it might even make it more ambiguous as to whether I should proceed. And then the second thing would be, I think people are already looking for advice from these AI devices, like the Wise Owl, but is that going to leave too much dependency on them to make the decisions for you? And then are you going to get mad at them for not making the right decision, the robot or the AI device? And is the AI device going to be considering the right variables to input for the decision?
Okay, so that's both of them interesting questions. So let's think about that. With the AI skis issue, for example, if you have a machine capable of doing these things, you have to have also the ability to practice on your own so that you get your muscle memory where it belongs. You can have all the assistance in the world, but if you're going to fall over like a sack of flour, they're not probably going to be able to keep you up. There's just a limit to what the machine can compensate for. As far as the dependency, I would ask a simple question. Have we become far too dependent on vehicles for our travel instead of our feet? You see that there's a certain amount of leverage or advantage that you gain that is far above whatever you had with your own natural methods. So dependency on AI systems will certainly grow. It's just going to be integrated into our society like most anything. The problem is do you as an individual choose to make yourself more utilitarian and healthy by getting out there and walking and doing stuff, so to speak, thinking your own problems through and finding your own solutions? People will become dependent on it. They do every time there's an advancement.
Sir Charles, would it be the neurosurgeon who will implant the brain implants?
Presently, yes, and even if you're using the stent type, you absolutely need somebody who has the expertise to know where, when, and how. You wouldn't hire, like a florist to pour concrete for you, and you certainly wouldn't hire anybody but a neurosurgeon to put an implant in.
First-time caller Ace in Buffalo, New York. Hey, Ace, go ahead, sir.
How you doing today, George?
All good, thanks.
I'm glad to be on the show. I'm calling because I have studied AI, quantum computing. What little I do know about it is that AI quantum computing can do 120,000 calculations per second, and there's also artificial life. Artificial life can do 160,000 calculations per terabyte each second. My question is, well, George, do you remember when you had on the inventor of the SIN chip that was putting the SIN chip inside soldiers back in 2015 or 2016?
Yep.
Would that be connected to artificial life and artificial intelligence as well? And as far as transhumanism goes, as far as men trying to upload their thoughts to AI and artificial life, that wouldn't be souls. That would be our conscientious thoughts. And what is your take on that, Sir No?
Okay, so first of all, artificial life is, as you know, an entirely different discipline, and artificial life doesn't even necessarily have to involve intelligence. Any life form that you see on Earth, like bacteria, is certainly capable, but it doesn't necessarily make it intelligent. Artificial intelligence, on the other hand, is the thing that gives the real flexibility and utility to things. If we combine artificial life and AI, such as those new biological robots that they made of groups of cells, if we do something along those lines, we have whole new worlds to explore of complexity and, possibilities. I mean, imagine materials that repair themselves and grow into the form you need, or can be commanded to become whatever you want. The speed of computing on things these days is literally up, for some of the GPUs that you can buy for the graphics on your computer, like billions upon billions of calculations per second. Otherwise, they couldn't draw the polygons and do the shading that fast. But what we're looking at is the ability to cram that in ever smaller, less power-hungry spaces. And I imagine within the next 3 to 5 years, just about every piece of computing hardware that we're using is going to be obsolete because of the rate of change. The only thing that might slow it down is the market itself and what they're willing to sell.
Joe in the Bronx, take it away, Joseph. Welcome to the program.
I wanted to ask Sir Charles if he believes the emulators that were mentioned earlier in the program can play a role in reincarnation and possibly resurrection.
Oh, absolutely. The thing here is, if you as an organism have a mind that is basically a program running in your brain. The brain is the hardware that supports it. If you have a different medium that will support it, and you move it into that medium, it'll run just as well, considering that the medium has to operate just as the brain does. That's your emulator. You have somebody who is near death, and they have themselves uploaded and just stored, for instance. You certainly could clone a body for them if we've reached that level of technical expertise and download their mind in it. And so you could continue your existence, absolutely. I think that it's more likely that people will probably want to have extremely complicated and subtle neural systems in, like, say, a nanotech body. And I know that's a few years off, but the rate, again, of technical growth is very rapid and expanding. I would imagine that a more durable, if you want to borrow the old biblical phrase, incorruptible body would be the way most people would choose to go, because it'll have advantages such as being able to sit quietly, turn your clock up 1,000 times, and think 1,000 times longer in a unit of time to get a problem solved, just as an example.
Next up, Kevin's turn, truck driving in Kentucky. Thanks, Kevin. Go ahead.
Hi, George. Big fan.
Thanks,
Big
Kev.
fan.
Thank you. Go ahead, Kev.
Okay. I've been listening for 25 years, and tonight you guys made it personal. This is talking about sight earlier. My daughter, she was diagnosed with a retina disease when she was 12. She's now 16, and through a lot of prayer, it's not progressed the way we were told she would go blind when she's 22. And I've been following a doctor. Her name is Sheila Nierenberg, and she's developed Bluetooth glasses that literally they implant a device onto your optical nerve, actually the ganglion nerve that attaches to the back of your retina. And the device will actually, what you're seeing, will jump the bad retina and go into that device, and it will send the signal to your brain.
Wow.
And I just wanted to see if you guys were familiar with that. It's just amazing. And I know, George, you talked about there's a lot of folks that listen to the show that they can't see and are blind. And I just for those that are listening, and just I'm sure they pay attention to this too, but it's just amazing technology.
Okay. Well, I'm not surprised in the least, and I'll certainly look into it. I have not followed the developments in it lately because of all the work I'm doing in other fields. But, yeah, it doesn't surprise me in the least. I've seen a lot of these developments coming, and it's great. It's wonderful. And as long as it's affordable and people can get it, that's the key to making life better for people. I mean, yes, I want to see more.
Stevie Wonder was born premature, and they put him in a hyperbaric oxygen chamber.
Right.
And he went blind because of it. Will someone like that ever get their sights back with artificial intelligence?
Well, it depends. Again, it's the subtlety of the interfaces and the hardware we build. I do believe it can be done. I couldn't make a prediction about how quickly or how rapidly. Oxygen, as you know, in high concentration is quite toxic. And I would think that sort of damage would be, from our standpoint, irreversible. But what if we could print the individual cells and inject them? Neural tissue seems to know where to go to replace damaged tissue. I would think that neural stem cell treatments might be something you could do right away. And if that didn't work, then I'd go to the more technical microchip methods with the interface.
Sir Charles, stay in touch with us. You're one of the best. Up next, Susan Slaughter, as we talk about hauntings in the spirit world on Coast to Coast. Hauntings in the spirit realm. Up next, Susan Slaughter joins us, first-time guest. Let's see what she has to say as a paranormal investigator when we come right back on Coast to Coast AM. And welcome back to Coast. George Norrie with you, Susan Slaughter with us, a paranormal investigator whose investigative works can be seen on series like Sci-Fi's Ghost Hunters International, the Dark Zone TV, Travel Channel's Paranormal Caught on Camera. For the past 16 years, Susan has investigated supernatural phenomena in more than 30 countries worldwide, in multiple historical locations from ancient Incan and Mayan temples to the hidden tunnels and crypts of the Knights Templar. Through her research, she has developed a keen understanding of death and the spirit realm. Susan, welcome to the program. Looking forward to chatting with you tonight.
Hi, George. Thank you so much for having me. The pleasure's all mine. Trust me.
How did you get involved in this?
Well, I think like most people that get involved in the paranormal, it's through personal experience and trying to understand, what was happening. Some of my earliest memories in my life were paranormal occurrences. And I guess when I was like 4 or 5 years old, I remember being visited by, orbs of light, seeing shadow people, and expressing that to my mother, who kind of, nurtured that curiosity instead of shunned it, and as I got older, the experiences started getting a little bit more and more profound, and I just wanted to understand, what was it that I was experiencing? What are these light beings? What are these shadow figures? And so my father, put a K2 meter in my hand when I was 13 years old and said, next time you see something in the room, turn this device on and see if it corroborates your experience. And that was like the first idea that I had, that, I could actually use devices to help teach me, what I was experiencing. And so that was the birth of the investigator, I guess.
Did your mother have these abilities as well?
Well, I mean, I would say that the person in my family that was more with the abilities was my father. He was the one who taught me how to read tarot. My mother, she's a devout Catholic. She was taught by nuns her whole life.
Yeah.
She was the one handing me, like rosaries and statues of Archangel St. Michael for protection. And whenever I had a paranormal experience, she interpreted it as archangels, guarding me. And then, my dad was like, oh, they might be spirits, or maybe you have a gift. And so they allowed me to nurture that curiosity, which was great. And when I was about 18 years old, I'm born and raised in Miami. And I was watching television series, seeing other people. Well, I was watching Ghost Hunters, back on the Sci-Fi Channel.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, people actually, investigate this. And I thought it was something that was only on television until, I saw a car in my neighborhood wrapped that said League of Paranormal Investigators on the side. And there was a website. And I was like, what? So these people exist. And so I immediately reached out to them and I said, hey, if you need me to sift through, audio or video, if you need me to just like run and grab you coffee while you're on investigations, I'm your guy. And then eventually they let me join the team. And that's what started my professional career as an investigator.
And you've never looked back, have you?
Never looked back. I mean, I think it's my calling. I mean, honestly, like, how do you go back after you touch this type of energy, after you experience it, It's the most profound question that, civilizations are built on. Some of the oldest texts in the world, the oldest ideas of the world are based around spirituality, and like the whole religions and kingdoms are built around the idea of life after death and how to live your life according to it, And so once you touch that, you open Pandora's box, you're going down the rabbit hole,
What have you learned, Susan, over the years about what the spirit realm might be?
When I first started investigating, compared to where I'm at now, my views have completely changed. I've learned to lean on, my experiences more so. For instance, on investigations, things that I've noticed I've come across are things that I've captured in audio and on film and on devices is what I kind of lean towards, more of a scientific, explainable thing, which is the majority of the ghosts that we encounter in haunted locations, I believe to be recordings of sorts within the atmosphere. Something that still holds a bit of intelligence to it, only that's, sparked through a memory. And what I mean by that is, you could go to a place where there's the white lady that shows up at the top of the stairs, and you could pick up, anomalous, like disembodied voices, or maybe pick up things on camera at that location. And it's the same memory replaying over and over again. But it's not necessarily what I believe to be actual human spirit. It's just a recording in the atmosphere. But that being said, there are so many layers to paranormal phenomena outside of a ghost, outside of a haunting, which I believe to be like a spiritual recording within the environment. There's also non-human entities out there, things that, are conscious and intelligent, but don't necessarily exist within, a physical being, So these are like non-physical entities, and I've discovered that they're sentient, they could interact, and, they live, on the electromagnetic spectrum and light spectrum, from ultraviolet to, infrared, So what's crazy about that is that these beings have the ability to travel with light, and so I've come across that. There's also non-human entities that have the ability to appear in, almost like an animistic way. And so every time I've come across, these types of beings or entities, like it shifts everything about the field, It's a lot.
How did magic, Susan, enter all of this?
Well, my father, is a practicing Wiccan. He passed away, 14 years ago, so he's no longer with us.
Sorry to hear that.
But was a very well-known member in the pagan and Wiccan communities. And I was introduced to magic that way, and I feel like it resonated a lot with me as a person. I'm not necessarily Wiccan. I do consider myself to be a witch, and I do practice forms of ritual, and I do, commune with non-human entities.
I notice your Instagram is Susan the Dragon Witch.
That's correct, yes.
Okay.
So, I definitely identify with that as a lifestyle with my practices, but all of the things that I take into my practices as a witch, I take from, variations of different religious backgrounds. I will have on my altar, Archangel St. Michael right next to Baphomet and Hecate, as well as Shiva and Naga Kanya and Mami Wata and, Oshun, So everything, is all encompassing because those energies are very real in every single religion. They all have different names, but they all represent these non-human entities that are these intelligent beings here to assist humans in the three-dimensional reality,
You're going to be at the Conscious Life Expo. I'll see you out there.
I am going to be there. I'm very excited about it. I'm doing one of my most favorite things I love to do, which is seances. I have 3 that I'll be hosting, and I'm very, very excited about it. It's something that I'm very passionate about, helping people access their own psychic abilities to commune with other entities. And so it's going to be a bit of a workshop, a bit of a counseling session where people can connect with extraterrestrials that they choose, their higher selves, human or non-human, energies. So I'm very excited about that. And I'm also moderating a panel on the use of divination for, magical purposes.
And, of course, divination works in a big way, dowsing and all that, doesn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. And, we're going to have some amazing people on the panel, from so many different walks. We're going to have Miss Gabrielson, who's a near-death experiencer, and she accessed some of her abilities through, coming close to death on several occasions. We have other channelers like Maureen the Oracle, and then we have Alexandra, who, she channels the Golden Arrow. We have Kadrick Olson, who's, very well-known witch in Los Angeles who does all sorts of, runes and bone readings. And we've got Travis McHenry, who's a occultist and also has his own line of tarot cards. And it's going to be awesome. Like, I'm very excited about it. I was there last year, and I got to meet a lot of these people. And, if you've done Conscious Life Expo, so, you meet so many interesting people, whether they're ufologists, whether they're, quantum physicists, whether they're paranormal investigators like me or witches or oracles. And you just get in the most amazing conversations late night around a glass of wine. I remember having such amazing conversations with Apollo, who's giving me readings on, like, what type of star seed I was. And, like,
they're very good at what they do.
They're fantastic, and it's really great to kind of, like, rub elbows with everybody and kind of take information, and that's another reason why Conscious Life Expo, the people that go there, you have thousands upon thousands of people who are enlightened and spiritual that are willing to open Pandora's box, who are willing to go down that energetic rabbit hole and have these conversations. And so when you go to the Hilton during that weekend, it's just so incredibly supercharged. And the reasons why I'm hosting my seances there and doing 3 of them this year. Last year I did 1, and it was such a hit.
That's intense, isn't it? 3?
Three's nuts, and you know what? I've never done that before. I might regret it, George.
How long? How long do they last each?
Oh gosh, at least 2 hours.
Wow.
It's, at first I do a little bit of like a historical, introduction to spiritualism, which, is a little controversial,
Sure.
like you think about the Fox sisters in the Victorian era and how they were con artists. And it kind of gave spiritualism a bad name. Houdini hated seances and didn't believe in it at all, and it was considered hoo-ha, but to be honest, like you can't let a few people ruin it for everyone else, and so I'm trying to bring it back and show the proper way to utilize tools like a Ouija board, to utilize tools like, pendulums with scrying boards. I also do a gallery reading where I go into a state of hypnosis and I read, via possession, which is another practice that I do. And so it is a lot. And like I said, I might regret it. But to be honest, like I have so much fun, even though it's incredibly draining. But I do have a whole practice before every seance and after every seance to kind of clean my slate and like get my energy right again, And
what has been one of the strangest things that has happened while you've been conducting a seance?
Well, I'll tell you about the first time I ever used the spirit board. And
is a spirit board a Ouija board?
Right, correct. Yeah.
I hate those things.
It's just not a name owned by Parker Brothers,
Right.
But a spirit board before, it was mass produced, as Ouija, it's the same thing. They used to all be circular, like some of the original spirit boards out there. Very similar to like a scrying board today. But I guess the strangest thing that's ever happened was the first time I ever used a Ouija board, and I begged my mom, please let me get one. Like, here's this budding spiritualist over here who's into the paranormal, and she finally gave in, and I got like one of those glow-in-the-dark ones, and I convinced my mom and my dad to sit with me as I played with the spirit board. And, I wasn't doing it correctly. I was holding the planchette alone, and I do believe that this is like a funneling of energy that you need with a group atmosphere. And I was harnessing all this energy all by myself that I could feel my wrists starting to get hot and my arms getting shaky. And I was getting these downloads of like the information that I wanted to move the planchette to, but I was like, you're not supposed to consciously move the planchette. It's supposed to move on its own, right? And so I didn't push the planchette to the specific areas of the board that I was feeling led to. And so what ended up happening was full-blown possession. It was like whatever was trying to get its messages out, I wasn't doing it via the planchette on the board, and so it just fully took me in. And that was how I discovered my ability for channeling spirit, through allowing them to enter me as a physical vessel. And that was terrifying. I remember.
Have you ever been hurt?
I've never been hurt in any of my paranormal endeavors. Not once. I've never been scratched.
Is that unusual that you haven't been hurt?
Well, I think it all comes down to the approach and your intentions. Energies like spirit energies at locations, because they don't have bodies to, they're incorporeal entities. They can feel your intentions and your aura and your energy as you come in. And so I think, before every investigation, I always have like the utmost respect for all the entities there, regardless of the reputation that they have, I don't go in there to exploit them. I go in there because I always have done this, even though I ended up doing this for television and on productions, for my entire career. The whole reason why I've ever done any of this was for my own understanding of supernatural phenomena. And I'm may have a little bit of a motive to like grow energetically to the point where I could become an ascended master, but that's neither here nor there. I feel like we have to graduate, from this plane of existence, by opening all of these energetic boxes and understanding source energy. And I learned a lot through investigating the paranormal about that source energy. And I think going in there with the mentality in all my investigations, like, hey, teach me whatever you can. And if you can't, that's okay. I'm not putting you on the spot. I'm not expecting you to perform. I'm not scared of you. And I love you. I always come in there, like with this love energy. And I always try to lead investigations through my heart chakra, and not be so cerebral about it, and let the energies kind of come to me with whatever they can. A lot of the time when you watch these paranormal series, there's a lot of interrogation and, there's a lot of bringing up and hashing out like old traumas that in a lot of these places they go to, people had horrible ends to their lives, and have done horrible things, which causes these energies to stick around, and when you go in there like bad cop, interrogating these energies, you are antagonizing them, you become aggressive, and you're not leading with your heart, and so I think that's the reason why I've never been attacked. But I've definitely had uncomfortable encounters, like
you do believe in demons, for example, right?
I believe that there are negative and positive aspects to every energy out there.
Yeah.
I don't believe in demons in a biblical sense. Like, I think that, if Beelzebub is a true demon, from the nether regions of hell, he's not this all-encompassing negative entity. All superior energies are neutral, to be honest. They just rule within different realms of, the light spectrum and, different vibrational realities.
Hold on for a second, Susan. We're at a break. We're going to come back and chat more with you about your paranormal experience on Coast to Coast AM. And welcome back to Coast. George Norrie with you, Susan Slaughter with us as we talk about the paranormal spirit realm. What do you think the spirit realm really is, Susan?
Well, to be honest, like I said, I don't know if I believe there's this realm where spirits reside. I don't necessarily believe in, a person dies, they were good in life, they go to heaven. A person dies, they were horrible in life, they go to hell. I think if you truly lived your life to the fullest and acknowledge your power within this three-dimensional realm, you ascend into a higher vibrational existence on another dimensional level in reality. I also believe that there are opportunities, when we die, our energies disperse into the mass ether. And when, that energy comes back into a newborn, we come back with bits and fragments of other energies. And so sometimes, people have this idea of, past lives. And I believe, honestly, like yourself, myself, and all the listeners listening right now, have a bunch of fragments of, past life energies that have been recycled within their beings. Those energies that didn't get the chance to transcend into, higher vibrational existences. When you think about the great teachers of religion, when you think about Jesus Christ, like what happened to him when he passed away, I believe like that energy that has touched great, knowledge eventually transcends and goes to another higher dimensional plane. The story of Metatron, a human that turns into an archangel. These are all ascended masters. And then the bits of energy that haven't graduated, end up kind of getting pushed forward into different lives until they are ripe enough to transcend our realm.
Since you've been doing this now 16 plus years, what has been the most gratifying aspect of this for you?
There's nothing more exciting than capturing phenomena on camera or on audio. Honestly, that's the most exciting thing about it all for me, having like proof that, I think like most people that listen to this that are into, alternative thinking, supernatural phenomena, they start thinking into broader spectrums, into quantum physics and our energy and how the universe corresponds with who we are as on a soul level. Like when you get affirmations on tangible things, like a full-bodied apparition, or like a light being on camera or a disembodied voice captured on audio, that to me is what validates everything. Because, I still don't know if I'm living in a dream or reality sometimes. I'm like, with the things that I've experienced, I need the tangible evidence to know I'm not nuts, George.
Well, if you're nuts, we're all nuts.
We're all nuts, especially our listeners, right?
You have developed a keen understanding of death. What does that mean to you?
I think that what that means is I've learned a lot on this journey in the paranormal field. When I first started out, I thought ghosts were spirits left behind. I thought these were like incorporeal, like thinking and, stuck entities. And I will be honest, I that's not what I think ghosts are, but I understand now where our energies go, and I believe that there are aspects that get recorded within our environment, but rest assured, if there's a haunting, doesn't mean that that's the soul trapped within our reality. I don't believe that. I definitely believe that the spirit realm is the constant snowballing of energies that get reused and rebirthed into new life-breathing humans, and it's ever evolving. And then once those energies, like I say, graduate, when it touches the idea of this universal energy that we all harness, because I truly believe that we are all fractals or extensions of one large consciousness that's unfathomable. I can't even, begin to describe it. That's what the spirit realm is. The spirit realm is this giant consciousness that we're all tethered to, we're all experiencing on an individual level. And we're just a fragment of all of that, experiencing each other, experiencing ourselves as this one consciousness. And because I believe that wholeheartedly, that, I can't have like hatred to anybody else in my life because I feel that you're an extension of me. Even the worst person, that abuser or serial killer, all of those are all fragments of like this one consciousness. We need that kind of ebb and flow between like dark and light to experience ourselves. And so when you asked me about the demon thing earlier, do I believe in demons? I do believe in order for this to be a continual, cycle of energy constantly growing and creating itself, you have to have that friction and opposition of the good versus evil. If everything was perfect and peachy keen and all love and light, then we would get lost in hyper white light, and there will be no extension or understanding of this energy that's perpetuating, our energy forward on a universal scale. It's when you see like negative and positive, fueling the ionosphere, fueling the battery in your phone and devices, you need that in order to have this energetic exchange. And that's the same. We're always going to have the nemesis in our world. And so I think that's the reason why negative energies get recorded within our environment. And that's a whole other Pandora's box to open. The reason why traumatic energy is so sticky is because I believe it to be stored in the memories, for people who are open to, like you had yesterday, Patty Negri on, another witch who's like a person who is able to be, like she's a medium and she could talk to energies. the reason why the planet and, this mineral records, traumatic things is to continue to teach other people how to transcend these negative energies. It's like a recording. It's like a teacher. It's there. It's a memory to be tapped into. Because as you know, we have amnesia of our civilizations and how things have been going, and there are wars fought over the proper text of spiritual behaviors, and so when the Gaia we live on records these traumatic events, people that are, who are sensitive enough to tap into those recordings are going to get the messages, and some of the greatest philosophers in the world have been able to tap in and understand, the energies and read those energies and warn people who have that amnesia about how not to be, I guess it's kind of like a teacher, so to speak. And I also correlate it to the idea of the reason why hauntings even exist is I think it's this Gaia energy that holds on to all of the stored memory of people's lives. That is what is the true recorder of the Akashic records, I believe.
What is your understanding, though, Susan, of the soul? What do you think it is?
I think it's our energetic, it's an energetic, I guess, tether to our source energy and identity. I believe that, in the Bible it says that man was made in the image of God. And I believe how that really correctly translates is that God is this source energy and we all contain it. And so that's what the soul is our little portion of our, it's a little portion of that cosmic energy that we are tethered to on a grand scale. And we have that soul as an energy. It creates this life force within us. It's part of it becomes our personalities. It becomes, the auras that we emit, and it becomes our recording devices of the things we've accomplished in our life. And when we die, when our bodies release that energy, it could either transcend or and fragmentalize its way and kind of go into the rest of the ether. And then it could be reborn back with other little sources and fractals into new life, or it can transcend into another plane of existence on a graduated scale.
Interesting take on all of this. And how much of it is based on energy?
Everything is based on energy, George. It's almost unfathomable. We don't even understand the source of this energy. We understand sources of certain types of energy, we see the sun, and we understand, that the sun, helps charge and feed and, photosynthesize all of our plants. Our skin, break it down as vitamin D, which is a necessary nutrient. Without the sun, we would have nothing. But that's one star in our solar system, whereas there's billions, maybe trillions of sun-like things nurturing other planets and other solar systems on the most, crazy macrocosmic level, and so it's just what we know about energy is so incredibly minute. And I think that's the reason why we still have paranormal questions and phenomena, is because a lot of the stuff that we're experiencing, humankind has yet to understand the energy that it truly is. And, man can't understand energy unless we learn how to harness it ourselves, and so we just invented the light bulb, so to speak. You know what I mean? That's an invention that's not even that old, where we just learned how to harness light through electromagnetic energy. Building a microwave energy. This is all new stuff. And so imagine in 1,000 years from now, the energies we discover. I mean, we just discovered the Higgs field, because of the Hadron Collider. And that, to me, was something so profound in science that really explains what I feel like walking every day, when we feel like there's this separation, between you and your desk and that pencil and you and another person. But really, there is this soup we live in, almost like this whole field in between us that literally we're touching everything all the time, and like this chain link of events. We could be touching a squirrel in a park in New Zealand right now. And that's how I've been accessing my information when I do my psychic downloads. That's how I've been accessing my information, when I am, being empathetic towards other people, where I could kind of read their energies. And I wasn't able to like put that in words, that I felt like I walk in the soup and, I'm touching everyone's energies all the time, because I don't really feel a separation between me and other things. And so when we found out that the Higgs field is a real scientific term for the soup that we walk in, it was like the light bulb went off in my head, and I was like, finally someone scientifically discovered how psychics and mediums access energy.
What is your rationale, though, Susan, on why this happens? Why we have the afterlife? Why we have all these supernatural events?
I think that partially it's undiscovered forms of energy that we will eventually start to understand and be able to harness in maybe 1,000 or more years from now. The other side of it is I believe the reason why hauntings get stuck in our environment, the reason why memory is stored, that phantoms exist, that ghosts exist, is because this planet is a giant recording device. And it has the capability of recording everything that's ever happened on it at any given time. And I believe that is the source of the Akashic records.
That's pretty magical. Susan Slaughter with us. We're going to take calls next hour with Susan about the afterlife. What is it about the afterlife that you would like to know that you haven't found out yet?
What I would like to know, I would like to just have this massive download, mega mind event of just everything that, it would probably melt me into smithereens if I ever got that informational download. But what I would like to see happen is being able to kind of like have these near-death experiences. Like, what was that movie that back in the 90s, I believe it was like called Flatliners or something, where people were able to kind of like separate from their bodies and kind of travel and ask all these questions.
And then come back.
To be honest, and to come back, and do it so often to the point where you can make a science of it, where it's not something just like fleeting and intangible, or something you die trying. But to be honest, like, I don't think we're meant to know all the answers to these questions in this existence. I believe it's the whole calling of our growth in this three-dimensional reality is to not have those answers and to pursue them in alignment with, our energetic paths and, and growing in our growth, because if we don't seek those things, then we perish in our knowledge and our growth, and so I feel it's important to not have those answers. And I don't feel stuck not knowing everything. Some people, they really, really like have to explain everything away. They have to have those answers. But I don't think that that's for our lifetime in this existence. I'm pretty sure that when I die, I'm just going to get another little fragment of Pandora's box that I didn't even know. And I probably still wouldn't know all the answers.
You're going to come back and haunt us, aren't you?
I will not be back to haunt you. I will be an ascended master on another energetic level. If anything, I'll come back as an archangel, and I will assist mankind in, raising their vibration.
That's cool. Susan, stay with us. We're at the top of the hour. We're going to come back and take an hour of phone calls with you. The lines are now open. Susan Slaughter with us. Her website is thedarkzone.tv. Her Instagram is susanthedragonwitch.com. And We will be back with your calls on Coast to Coast AM, so don't touch your dial. And this is the hour we'll take your calls with Susan Slaughter as we talk about hauntings in the spirit realm on Coast to Coast AM. And welcome back to Coast. George Norrie back with Susan Slaughter. We'll take your calls this hour. Susan, what does a haunting mean to you?
Well, I guess a haunting means any place that contains an energy of a traumatic event that occurred that can be experienced non-corporeal. So a haunting is something where it's like an energy recorded in an environment, and people can trigger that energy to manifest certain electromagnetic frequencies and energies, fluctuations, can trigger it also to manifest as well.
With these hauntings, does anything dangerous happen?
I've personally never experienced that. I feel that the only way negative aspects from a haunt can start happening is when the people in the environment fuel it with negative intentions or fear. A lot of the time, the entities, especially ghosts, they will have to draw from the energy within the environment to manifest. And if your energy is that of fear or anxiety, that will automatically manifest within that haunting. And so it gets reflected back with that within the environment. And so a lot of the negative aspect haunts usually happen because of a person that's fueling it with their energy and because that's where they sit.
As a witch, do you cast spells on people?
I definitely don't cast spells on people at all. I cast intentions, as I like to call it, towards the universe to help me manifest my goals and desires. I usually use that. Everything that I try to cast out there, I cast it with gratitude and cast it with like my intention for not just myself, but also like on a universal level. And so I don't do love spells or things like that. I don't do hexes. A lot of my spells usually come about, me writing intentions and things down. I always write intentions for the conscious collective, for the universe, and then I ask, the universe for whatever it believes to be the best intentions for me on my highest path to help me manifest it. But I don't ever ask, for specific things too much.
Too much?
Too much. I might have made
just
a
little
and
bit.
said I would like to be on George Norrie's show, and I wrote it down, and that was probably about like a year ago. And look, now I'm talking to you.
It happened. That's right.
It happened.
Let's go to the phones east of the Rockies. Cynthia's with us in Massachusetts. Hello, Cynthia.
Hi, Cynthia.
Hi, dear. Yeah, I just want to know. I have some spiritual gifts, and I'm just trying to find out how I can expand or make them more accessible.
That's a wonderful question, and one of the things that I started incorporating in my daily routines has been transcendental meditation. Transcendental meditation allows you to kind of melt away from your physical self and embody your universal self. It's not as hard as people think. When you get into meditation, there are still these thoughts that come into meditation. You don't have to go totally blank. But the more you practice, sitting there and focusing solely on your breath work and closing your eyes and focus your vision inwards, focus, your intent, like all of your attention on the colors in the back of your eyelids, and focus on your breathing, you'll start noticing you unlock this ability to like let go of this like tangible world that's all around you. And you'll start accessing parts of yourself in your body, and you'll start noticing, wow, okay, during my meditations, I'm noticing I'm getting a buzz in my hand. So maybe you'll start noticing that you can touch objects and start understanding the stories behind them. Or you start getting like within a heart space and you start realizing you can like have empathetic psychic abilities. It wasn't until I started practicing transcendental meditation that I started unlocking different and unique psychic abilities that I had never had before. And so it's kind of like an advent calendar when you start, meditating every day. I meditate twice a day, 20 minutes a day, and you start opening little doors in that advent calendar that are little bits of ability within yourself that you didn't know were there.
In terms of death, what do you think it is?
I think death is just your physical body within this realm expiring. But death is really just a misconception. A lot of people think it's the end-all, be-all, but really what it is a graduation. Death is a graduation of your spirit, of leaving this physical three-dimensional reality and moving on to the next level, the next grade for your soul to experience.
To the phones we go. Chuck in Florida. Take it away, Chuck.
Good morning, everybody.
Hello, sir.
Good morning, Chuck.
Listen, two things. One, I've never had this sense of there ever being a beginning, and I don't have a sense that there will ever be an end, and I'll just leave that there. I never remember my dreams. I've always thought there might be a problem, but I don't dream. But here recently, about a month ago, I had a dream that I cannot get out of my head. And it was like I was in a different dimension. The people were typically, how aliens are portrayed, but not quite as exaggerated. They were all dressed to the nines, and I could relate that dream to you, but I was wondering, hell, I want to go back. I want to go experience this again, and I feel like I traveled interdimensionally in a dream, and I was wondering if you could provide some insight.
Insight on how to get back to your peoples on the other side via dream world, huh?
Well, whatever the other dimension was.
So I think that there is a big possibility that you could have accessed another dimensional reality. Maybe you could have traveled to another planet within another solar system. You might have had an out-of-body experience. And just because you don't dream, I do believe you maybe do dream. You just lose that, memory as you wake up. But if you want to revisit these beings, I would start out by maybe just to create a tangible, because we live in a three-dimensional world where everything is based off of objects and things around us, and so I would imagine just get a pen and paper and write down all the details you could possibly imagine from that dream. And then, maybe even focus, like you said, they were dressed to the nines. Write down all the details of what dressed to the nines was, and facial features. And then try to remind yourself that were there any smells, did you feel anything inside? Were you scared? Were you happy? Were you home? Were you lost, And then the more that you read that and revisit that, I think you're going to start implanting that world within your tangible brain, within your mind. And then as you go to sleep, you'll find yourself, maybe accessing a little bit more of that world every time. And if that doesn't happen right away, don't beat yourself up about it. You know what I mean? Just maybe speak out loud, use your words and be like, I'd like to, before you go to bed, speak outwardly your intentions for going into that space again. You say, I would like to have that opportunity to go back to that world where I met these people dressed this way, and try to relive all the things that you wrote down, but speak it outwardly before going to bed. And if these are other dimensional beings that might have taken you on a whim to their world, the intentions that you say, speaking out into the universe, verbalizing it, writing it down, is a calling to those extraterrestrials to come and take you back, I think.
Is the dream state, Susan, the dream state, the place for this to happen? I think it could be.
I think there's something that happens. I mean, I've always been perplexed as to the reason why does everything sleep? You know, why is that a reality in this, you know, tangible world that we live in? You know, why must we sleep? And I think it's, you know, the opportunity for us to access, you know, source consciousness. You know, that's when we wake up, we get our downloads and things like that. Our brains, you know, get recalibrated and touch with source and deep sleep. And then we go into these sleep cycles, right? And then we can access, you know, forms of consciousness in a weightless way where we can even leave our bodies, you know, like our souls, our consciousness can travel not only to other parts of the world, you know, but other solar systems, to other dimensional realities. I mean, I'm sure you've had guests on your show, George, that talk about, you know, these kind of psychic spies that are able to do that. And even the government,
sure. Yeah.
You know, people to do this. So there's people out there know that there's a way to access that type of ability by leaving your body consciously. And you do it by accessing a part of your psyche within certain, you know, sleep patterns or states.
Let's go to Marcia in Los Gatos, California, west of the Rockies. Hello, Marcia.
Hello, George. So nice to talk with you. I hope it's not too many times recently. But Tommy's got the pictures now, so make sure you look at them for a good long time.
Okay.
Susan, I want to talk to you about the soup we're in, the electromagnetic field that we've been sent over the last 50 years, you know, through the telemarketers. Our devices get the field. It accesses them. Our mind is a meter just as well, don't you believe?
100%, absolutely. And I believe a lot of the technological advances that we have today that we've learned to coincide with, you know, we live in this soup, the Wi-Fi soup, you know what I mean? Where it kind of, I think what it does is that it alchemizes it accesses a part of our body that now we get so used to feeling, you know, these man-made waves. You know, we've got radio frequency surrounding us at all times. I've got my Wi-Fi, my neighbor's Wi-Fi. You've got all the lines and the posts and the lights outside putting out harsh electromagnetic readings. You know, all this man-made EMF and radio frequency. What it's doing is actually making it harder for us to access like naturally, you know, conducted electromagnetic frequencies on a cyclical level, you know, and so we've kind of lost touch with that energy. And I think what it does is it makes it harder for us to access some of our psychic abilities. Because then, you get stuck in this man-made electromagnetic soup that it kind of obscures the messages that nature has for us and maybe even non-human energies and even, you know, spiritual imprints on this planet.
Susan, what is one of your favorite rituals and how's it used?
Well, one of my favorite rituals that I do these things that I call bundles. And what I do is I'll take about 5 or 6 pages and I write down in one page my intentions for love. And then I write down another page my intentions for abundance, and then another one my intentions for growth, and my intentions for wealth, and my intentions for the conscious collective. And then on each paper I offer little offerings. You know, I'll put some honey on some pages. I'll put like frankincense, myrrh, Palo Santo. I wrap it up with like incense. I wrap it up with crushed seashells and things that represent the elements. And then I will do, I guess, a flame ritual in a cauldron with a meditation. And what I do is I use that fire in my bundles to release my intentions into the ether, I guess. And I find it to be one of my favorite things to do is to write things down because it's getting your intentions out of your head and onto something 3D and tangible. And what witchcraft is using the things we have within our dimensional access, which is, physical objects, and transforming that energy and intention from physical into non-physical. Fire is a great element to do that, and so I utilize it a lot. And when I try to access energy, when I try to access the help of like ancestral energies, or maybe even like non-human ascended master type energies or angelic energies, even like lower vibrational, what we would call quote unquote demonic. I don't really like to use the terms demons and angels, but usually they're like elementals and like higher vibrational beings. And then I try to access them through, maybe sometimes I'll do a little bit of like a bloodletting ceremony to access my DNA, to access my ancestral, lineage as an offering, to sacrifice to them, showing them that, this is my trail, this is my DNA, this is where my intentions live within this flesh. And so, I use fire usually to alchemize that. And then I'll do a bit of a baptism afterwards to cleanse my energy. And usually I use like a Himalayan salt bath for that. And I'll do like a meditation afterwards. A ritual takes me hours, all day, like to prep it. So,
like your seances, maybe, huh?
My seances take a lot of time, yeah, because even though when you sit at a table with me and we're doing the seance, I did a lot of energetic prep within myself and within my tools before bringing it to the seance, a lot of energy clearing.
You do it all yourself?
Yeah, I'm kind of a lone witch. I don't have a coven. I have utilized help with people before, and I do consult with other practitioners. I've gotten a lot of great advice from members of my father's coven and just observing how they did things, using tools like athames and cauldrons, the whole idea of a fire ritual, which has really stuck with me, and I ran with it. But yeah, I mostly work alone, and I think it's just,
you prefer that?
I prefer it because I work with a lot of non-human energies, and I'm a channeler where I use a lot of possession, with my rituals and with my seances. And some people don't feel comfortable with sharing their physical space with energies like I do. And so usually I just take it upon myself to do it, maybe because I haven't found someone who was willing to do the things that I do in that way. Everybody has a different method behind the magic, and some people might not feel comfortable doing things the way I do it. So I try not to push my methods on others.
All right, Susan, we're going to come back in just a moment here on Coast to Coast and take final phone calls with you. All her information is linked up at coasttocoastam.com, including her website. And on Instagram, she's Susan the Dragon Witch. Back with your final calls in a moment on Coast to Coast AM. We'll be back with final calls with Susan Slaughter in just a moment as we talk about hauntings in the spirit realm, so make sure you're a part of the program. On our next Coast to Coast program, mentalist Uri Geller joins us for the first couple hours as we go live to Israel, and then we'll be back for more of those Friday night into Saturday morning open lines. And welcome back to Coast. George Norrie with you, Susan Slaughter with us, our final segment here. Susan, I've got your website as thedarkzone.tv. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's a website for an independent production that I put on with a bunch of other fellow paranormal investigators. So it's, just an independent project that I work on where I go investigate some of the most haunted locations in the world with some of the best investigators in the world.
Good for you. What's your next project? Anything up on the horizon?
Well, I'm currently filming season 6 of Paranormal Caught on Camera, which you could find on Discovery Plus or the Travel Channel. I will be at Conscious Life Expo in Los Angeles the the weekend, I guess, just before Valentine's Day. So like 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th.
Yeah, that weekend. That's right.
Yeah, that whole weekend where I'll be doing my seances. I'm doing 3. They're very limited access. I only have 16 seats.
That's it?
At each seance. Yeah, we keep it tight-knit, you know. I try to keep it very intimate because everybody brings their own energies to a seance, you know, and so we got to make sure that everybody gets the chance to communicate with who they came to communicate
Do you
with.
darken the room and stuff like that?
I do, yeah. I set the mood.
That is.
I set a mood for sure. I do that also because, you know, the electromagnetic output of like man-made lights and things like that could really hinder some energies from coming in. So we try to like keep it really relaxed and low-key with a minimal amount of people.
I went to a seance once, Susan, and they searched us for pen lights and things like that. They did not want anything there that would be bright to destroy their seance. It was weird.
I mean, you're not going to trip over anything. You'll still be able to see everything around you. I really hope if you have the opportunity, I'd love to have you sit at my seance table one of those nights and give you that experience because I think it's a unique seance and it's something that I'm trying to get people into, kind of like a new age approach to spiritualism. I think you'll find it really interesting. So you got an invite, George.
Thank you very much. I'll be there Saturday. I've got a panel to put on. Full information on everything at Conscious Life, by the way, in our events section and in the highlight reel at coasttocoastam.com, which will be there in another week or so. But right now it's in the events. Let's take some final calls. Susan, you ready?
All right. I'm so ready.
First-time caller Tom in Minnesota. Welcome to the show. Hey, Thomas.
Hi, Tom.
Hello, George. You have the heart the size of Texas. You are such a wonderful man to put these programs on.
Thank you. I've got a great staff that keeps doing it for
Tommy
us.
is great. All your speakers are great, and it's such a wonderful thing. I want to make it fast. I know time is a matter. I've had 9 brain surgeries. I've been in a coma. I've had drowning. I have seen things people have not seen. I've traveled through time. The key ingredients is moisture. Our body, when you die, you leave a little moisture. Your soul leaves, and you can travel like a raindrop. It's moisture is the key. You have control. You can go where you want. You can do what you want. It's the most beautiful feeling in the world. All the tragedies we're having are bad, but we can do better. We can stop and realize we need to talk to people, spend 5 minutes, and show them respect. And we can realize that after we die, it's a much, much better place.
Amen.
Though we're in no rush to get there.
No rush to get there. It's so wonderful to be able to have people try and figure out what's going on with your energy and all the things that Susan's doing. She's very, very close to finding the answer. I have seen things that are unbelievable, and the key is to try and make peace with yourself and show respect to other people.
Thank you, Tom.
Amen. Thank you for that message. That's very powerful.
Is that easy to do, though, Susan?
Wait, he mentioned a lot of things. One of the easiest things you can do is respect the people around you. The energy that you put out.
I'm losing you on the phone, Susan. You there?
To respect. Yeah, I could hear you, George.
There you go.
Can you hear me?
Now it's
Okay.
much better. Yeah, you were breaking up big time.
I was just saying that, you know, one of the easiest things you could do is respect others, you know, putting out that good energy out there and keeping your mind open, you know, to the possibilities that science cannot explain. And there's probably a reason why Tom is still alive. 9 brain surgeries, a coma, all of this stuff. You know, he's not ready to go yet because he's still here for a reason, is to spread messages like that. So I appreciate it.
Let's go to Norm in St. Louis, Missouri. Hello, Norm. Welcome.
Hey,
Hi, Norm.
Great show.
Thank you, sir.
Just a couple of quick points. I'm a Christian, so I definitely believe in good and evil and demons and angels and whatnot. But I think the the closer you get to God, the closer He gets to you, and gives you certain gifts like discernment and maybe speaking in tongues or whatnot. And I've done church events, where we built schools up in Harlem and church up there in Gloucester and whatnot. So I've been around like that. But back in the 90s, I'm a contractor, so I went to bid a job a block away for the secretary of our little city that was like 200 people. And the second I walked through that door, I felt a very ominous, evil presence, and I wasn't there but a couple minutes, and I noticed they had like a goat's head on the wall, and Tom LaVey's Satanic Bible open, pentagrams everywhere, so they were Satanists. And I didn't want to be there, but I roughed it out for 3 or 4 days because it was like a $3,000 project. But they ended up having they left for a few hours one day, and I noticed a stink by their back door. And I had my buddy open up the basement door, and they had like 300 black cats in the basement, and had more dead. It was really disgusting. I turned them into the state and all this kind of stuff. But I just wanted her to know, I've been shot and twice, once with a razor tip arrow and once with a bullet. And talk about near death. Yeah, I went through the tunnel, and I've been up in heaven and seen Jesus and talked and whatnot, and came back. The second time I was in the hospital, I was looking down from the ceiling, and I could see my body on the operating table, and the nurses all crying with my parents and sister and whatnot, saying, "We're sorry, we lost Norm." And I was like, well, wait, I'm still alive. I'm right here. I'm just up on the ceiling.
I'm back.
It took a few little time, like 30 seconds to re-enter my body. But then I could hear that machine got a pulse. It was flatline. And they were all, happy as could be. And we got a pulse. And so, yeah, there is a hereafter. And I don't know if you ever meet God the Father, but I definitely have met Jesus. He was on the throne, and he was very polite. And once you're up in heaven, you don't want to come back to this place, trust me.
Did they send you back, Norm, or did you do this on your own?
Well, I'm sorry, what was the question?
Did they send you back, or did you come back on your own?
Yeah, like I said, I've talked to Jesus for probably both times that it happened. The first time was with an arrow. Second time was a bullet. The second time I remember more clearly. But both times it was more the vibe I guess I got out of it was I was like worthy enough to get to heaven, but it wasn't my time. He was like he explained I had purposes yet to fulfill before I could finally stay there, I guess. And so I guess the third time will be a charm. Hopefully that'll be enough.
All right. Thank you. What do you think of some of that, Susan?
I'm just curious to know, when he says he met Jesus, what did Jesus look like to you? How did he present himself?
Am I still on?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know. Well, Jesus was okay. When I came down this aisle, it was like cobblestone, but it was kind of gold, and there was angels and deceased people. I seen my grandpa there, and they were clapping and stuff. And when I got to the throne, it was kind of grayish white marble, and he was up on top. But basically, he was the same kind of look of what you see in a Catholic Bible or whatever, or pictures.
The pictures we've seen with the beard and all that.
He was like effervescent, like white and glowing, but he was very calm. It was I wasn't scared or anything. It was very calm, and I just talked to him like I do anybody else in my life, and we just had that talk, and it was basically I had purposes I had to come back and fulfill.
Right.
Okay. And when you saw the angels, what did they look like to you?
Bigger than humans, like maybe 7 foot, but they had wings, and there wasn't a bunch. I seen there might have been like 6 on the left side, 6 on the right. Like they were on either side, and I walked down this aisle that was maybe, who knows, like maybe 30 foot or 50 foot long of people clapping, and like some people like might have walked up and like shook my hand or said welcome home or something of that nature. But I felt very, very I felt like I was home. Like if you come home from school and your mom and she's got dinner on, it was kind of like that, but better.
You had some kind of experience there, Suze.
That's really cool. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Let's go to Shani in Los Angeles. Welcome. Hi, Shani. Go ahead.
Hi, guys. I called because I wanted to ask you if you had heard this idea that the tunnel of light that we see when we die is actually a trap that was implanted by an installation that was put there by the Greys or whoever the dark ETs are, and meant to trap us in a reincarnation cycle of this experience in this earth.
First time I've heard that, Susan. How about you?
That's also a first for me.
I don't think it's a trap.
I mean, what she's explaining is it's like a tunnel that sends you back for reincarnation, which doesn't go against some of the ideas that I believe as well. But whether I think extraterrestrials have the power to do something like that, extraterrestrials, they might have a little bit more knowledge than us when it comes to certain forms of mechanics and physics and things of that nature, because maybe they've existed a little bit longer than the Homo sapien. But I don't think they have abilities that are on a grander scale of consciousness, because I think just like I believe human beings and other living creatures on our planet and our solar system are tethered to this one godlike energy, I feel like all the other extraterrestrials are also part of that as well. They're also tangents and fragments of conscious energy as well. And so they are our brothers and sisters just in another solar system. And that's how I view extraterrestrials. Whether they are more advanced or less advanced, I still don't think they have the capability of harnessing something like that. Or maybe something we misconstrue. The tunnel could be maybe a portal, It could also maybe be when we see the tunnel, we could be misconstruing the tunnel as maybe our light body, and we're seeing our light body shoot, project at light speed levels that bend space and time. It makes it look like a tunnel, So, but one thing I'll tell you about the paranormal, you can't write anything off, Who knows? I die tomorrow and I find out the Greys did build that tunnel. At least we thought of it as a possibility, right?
A tunnel to where? That's the question.
That's the question.
Susan, we're almost out of time, and give folks an opportunity. How do they get a hold of you or see what you do?
Well, I'm most active on Instagram, and I get back to everybody, so feel free to write me, send me a DM, ask me questions. I try to help as many people as I possibly can. That handle is Susan the Dragon Witch, all one word. Feel free to check out, my earlier incarnations of investigations on Ghost Hunters International. You can find that on YouTube. I also go to the darkzone.tv, and that way you can access me. We also have an app called the Dark Zone app. That's also like a social media platform. It's all things paranormal. And we have all the investigators you know and love from your favorite series, and we investigate together and collab on large-scale investigations. Come and see me and George at Conscious Life Expo next month. It's going to be a hoot, come to my seance.
We're looking forward to it. So as we got to go, that's the clock, but you take care. You did a great job for a first-time guest. For Dan Galante, Tom Danheiser, Lisa Lyon, Lex Lonehood, Sean Ladouceur, Stephanie Smith, Chris Boros, Tim Banal, George Knapp, and Ian Punnett, I'm George Norrie, somewhere out there on Coast to Coast AM. We'll see you on our next edition. Until then, be safe, everyone.